This one like turned off. Oh, I think this one, never mind, it's good. I think I got it. I just started it, I think. I thought it turned off. Is it not charged or something? Yeah. All good? Yeah, I think so. Okay, we're good. Okay, good evening, everybody. Good evening, Doylestown. Glad to be here tonight. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Brian, and I am an alcoholic. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets right here every Saturday, St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street at 8:30 in Doylestown, PA. The food and the fellowship for this group usually starts at 8 o'clock, so feel free to show up early, help out. The business meeting for this group meets here every Saturday, 7 o'clock to 7:30. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teachings of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others can benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anybody that is new or from out of town at this meeting for the first time that would like to introduce themselves by first name so we can greet you? Yeah, go ahead. Fred? Welcome, Fred. Jamie? Welcome. Yeah. John, welcome. Get everybody? Okay, cool. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anybody with a working knowledge of the 12 steps and that is willing to sponsor, please raise their hands. So if you are new or here for your first time, look around, maybe grab one of those people after the meeting. We'll all be around here kind of breaking everything down. So hang out for a little while afterwards and get some names and numbers. Are there any announcements for the good of AA from the floor? Nobody have anything? Okay, a couple of quick announcements from this group. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. You can see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone that's willing to make donations for the purchase of big books or CDs can put their donations on that jar on the back table marked Big Book and CD donations. If you would like a CD of any speaker, past or present, you can see me or any home group member after the meeting. We can get you those. And now, do we have somebody coming up to read the preamble? Sherry's going to come up here and read the preamble.
Hi, I'm Sherman Alcoholic. The AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. I have asked Brian to come up and read the AA 12 Steps of Recovery.
My name is Brian, I'm an alcoholic. The AA 12 Steps of Recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And I would like to invite Brian back up here to chair the rest of the meeting.
Okay, awesome. Thank you to our readers. We do have a seventh tradition. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting. At this time, we're going to pass around the baskets. There's no dues or fees, but we do have expenses, and your contributions help us to provide, rent, big books, CDs, and refreshments. So it's greatly appreciated. There is absolutely no smoking on the church property. That's the church's policy. Pretty much goes for all churches these days. So just be considerate as you're coming and going from the meeting. Kind of keep it off the premise. Wait until you leave the church property. We appreciate it. Please take a moment to silence your cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. And now to introduce our speaker for tonight, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group on loan to us from the Feet First group of Doylestown, PA. Please help me welcome Thomas C.
Good evening. I'm an alcoholic all the time. Hey, everybody. Last time I sat in one of these chairs was a few years ago. I was in the back over there. There was a really pretty blonde girl sitting just a seat or two over. And I was with a friend of mine. He's also in the program. He knew her. We ended up hanging out with that girl and a couple other girls that night. I went to the Dairy Queen right after the meeting here, and I tried to buy her ice cream cone. And she turned it down. She turned my offer down. But now she's sitting in the back room. She's my wife. So I don't know. Maybe I was sitting there thinking after this we have to go to Dairy Queen, and I think she'll have to accept my ice cream cone now 3 years later. I thought I'd just break the ice with that because it's pretty crazy to think how time moves and the synchronicity of things and just the gifts of AA and just how sobriety just ebbs and flows. It's absolutely ridiculous as each passing month and year goes by. And that's each thing that God reveals to me each and every day. Hindsight's only 20/20. So I'm supposed to disclose to you what my drinking was like and what it was like when I entered this program and kind of what it's like today. I'll do that to the best of my ability, being appropriate and also kind of focusing really on the solution. I like to think of, when I share my experience and my story and kind of how I landed up here right now, I like to talk about more or less my time with God than when I was separated from Him. I think it brings me a lot more joy, and it just, I don't know, I like to resonate and stay in the solution rather than kind of dwell on the past, even though I know that's a big part of why I'm here and why I belong here and who I am and what defines me as an alcoholic. But more or less, I don't know. I just think that sometimes I stand here or I'll be in one of those chairs and I'll see other people stand and they really spend a lot of time focusing on, their time drinking and I'm just listening and listening and listening. And sometimes I wish I heard more about what it was like now for them and what their life kind of unraveled to be. I grew up in Lehigh County, near Allentown. Came up in a very normal home, very loving, very kind, very tolerant. Both my parents are in very favorable backgrounds to this disease. They work in social work. They're therapists now, but my mom was a school teacher. My dad was a social worker with adolescents in the Allentown area. And now they have their own private practice. So I grew up with a very tolerant and loving family who not only understood the disease of alcoholism and addiction, but all sorts of diseases and all sorts of different mental health issues and just a plethora of different people and different cultures and different ways of life. So I have two older sisters, and I'm the youngest. I'm the baby. I can't really tell you too much about my childhood other than everything was provided for me, everything I could ever have wanted. I have no reason to turn to alcohol and turn to the lifestyle that I did. I know today that there was nothing in the grips of my parents' control or the control of my sisters or the control of anybody in my life at that time that was going to save me or provide some type of cushion or barrier from that first sip, that first drink that was going to provide an awakening in me. But I don't think it would have mattered when or how or what. As soon as I took that first sip of alcohol, that's really all that was, that's all was needed. Where it happened, who it was with, what I was drinking, it didn't really matter. I just think that, God saw fit that when that moment happened, I was going to have, a life-changing event. The first time I took a sip of alcohol was a life-changing event. And not in the common way that I hear other people talk about alcohol. It really wasn't, it was a night, I was like 14, and we were around a campfire with just some of my friends. We were in 8th grade. We were a few guys, and we were celebrating getting over middle school and going, to the next jump of, the venture of high school, being freshmen. And we all cracked open a couple of random different drinks, because we were 14 years old and we all had stolen one bottle from everybody's, parents' fridge, and so it was just a miscellaneous of different stuff. And, I can't tell you that I got a warm, fuzzy feeling or that I felt that I had arrived or that I knew I had loved alcohol at that point. That's not really what came of that night. When I look back at that night, what I realized in an honest self-appraisal is that I just felt camaraderie. I felt like, I was connected to my friends. I felt like I was connected to the moment. I felt like there was a deeper meaning, and that we were celebrating something, and we were entering a new stage of life, and that I had enjoyed this drink as a sign, a token that we were all gathered together, and that that this was just a more or less like ultimately like what Bill talks about in that first page of chapter 2 of the solution, where they talk about ultimately, when you're on a ship, there's shipwreck, there's joyousness and camaraderie when you get off and you're saved and someone saves you. It's like the similar feature, when I first took that sip of alcohol with my friends, is the same thing. I just felt joyousness. I just felt camaraderie. I just felt like just at peace, and that it wasn't like I wanted to have another drink immediately. It's not like I wanted to just start, ripping through bottles and stealing and running around and catching DUIs at that moment. And I'm not to say that, my experience is different or that I'm unique or anything like that. I know plenty of other people that are like that. But, I think that's just part of the cunning and baffling feature of alcohol, is that a lot of us, when we first took our first drink, that we didn't think anything of it. We just thought it was just our first sip, our first drink, just like anybody else in this normal world takes a first sip of alcohol and their lives continue to just flourish the way normal people do. It's just the first sip is our first drink. It's not like, going to devastate me. It's not going to crumble my life to the ground. It's not going to, allow me to just run self-will rampant. And I continue to do that for the next few years. And I love to say, just like things just got worse. Up until when I put down a drink, that's just like the perfect gap to speaking to any newcomer, any person, anybody in my family that I talk to about this disease. Like, things just got worse. Rapidly too, for someone like myself. By the age of 17, 18, I was already drinking pretty much every day. I was catching DUIs. I mean, not DUIs, not yet, but underages. I was, bringing alcohol to school regularly in water bottles and different containers and whatnot. I caught my first underage when I was 17. It was a half day of school, a teacher and service day, and it was only like 3 or 4 periods. I got out at 11 o'clock, but I'm the type of alcoholic that by 9 o'clock in the morning I was already drinking, even though I was going to be out of school in another 2 hours. And I was on juvenile probation, and my PO happened to come by. She was a tricky little devil, and she gave me a urine test and also said, "Hey, mind if I breathalyze you?" And of course, being on probation, I had to comply, and I took the breathalyzer, and she popped me for my first underage at the age of 17 in school. I got handcuffed and taken out and processed. That would then happen again, not on a half day, but a regular day a few months later down the road. And by age 18, I was already sitting in juvenile rehab up in Quakertown. It was a designated juvenile rehab. It's no longer that. It's a regular adult facility. But without getting into the narrative and how things crumbled quickly, by the age of 18, I was ultimately a round-the-clock drinker. I was starting to have blackouts. I was starting to experience just a difficulty of life beyond bearable imagination that an 18-year-old should be focusing on. I saw my friends with great ease taking college applications and doing their next step in life, and I was just struggling and floundering to get by. I did, because like any good alcoholic, I lived a double life. Sometimes I often think I live multiple lives. I don't know if anybody can relate with that, but I just felt like I was torn between multiple people. You know, not just two, not between like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but like multiple people, any given day, any given group, anything. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting being in that lifestyle, especially at that age, of having to live the lifestyle of a chronic alcoholic, but really at adolescence still. And I would go off and finish school and somehow get by, and I would then go off to school over in Pittsburgh, and I would completely devastate and ruin that opportunity on an academic scholarship over to Duquesne University in Pittsburgh. And within a few months, I was already kicked out, same thing. Underages, possession of alcohol, just, rowdiness in the dorms and whatnot. And I would have my tail between my legs by December. I didn't even make it a whole semester, and I was already pretty much suspended for about a year, and with no intention of going back, just because of ego being so burst, and having to tell my family, and just the repercussions that come, and just the guilt and the shame. The guilt and the shame is something that, I talk to endless scores of alcoholics, and that's something that resonates with me so much when I talk to other people, is we can all touch upon each other, the pain, but just so much guilt and shame that comes with this disease, comes with this lifestyle, comes with these choices that we make, and, eventually have to face if we want to get sober. Not long after I would get kicked out of that school, I would then go to jail. I did a year in county facility, and then would then leave that facility, think that it was not a big deal to drink a couple weeks after being on parole, and long story short, a few months later after that, would catch another DUI while being on parole, and once again having to go back to prison. So at the ripe age of 21, September 9th, 2015, that was my last day of having any alcohol in my system whatsoever. I would then go off to state prison for that DUI, getting resentenced. I don't know if anybody can relate, but the judge doesn't really like when you show up multiple times and see him over and over again, and then each time there's a new separate charge or a new circumstance that's laid in front of him with paperwork. They get really bitter after like the second time normally. Ultimately I would then go up to state prison and sit there for a solid year, and little did I know that my life would drastically change. So it pretty much went like this. I had been sitting detoxing off alcohol on my parents' couch. I had been drinking at bars and running around for, about 7 or 8 weeks straight, barely sleeping, barely eating. And I had conked out on my couch. It had been about 48 hours I had been sleeping. Hadn't really eaten anything. I was just sleeping, sweating everything out and going through the shakes, so forth. And my PO finally knocked on my parents' door. I was on bail, like I had mentioned. I caught a DUI while I was on parole, and astonishingly enough, this PO gave me bail, even after violating parole with a new charge. I often think about how many opportunities and how many chances people gave me during this process before I got sober. I mean, people wanted to see the good in me so bad. People wanted to see the potential in me, and oftentimes I think all the time that the worst thing that people did back then was to see the good in me. Before I got sober, it was like the biggest mistake they ever made. Not because I don't think I'm worthy of that person, or that my self-image or my a value of myself could be of that limit or that stature, but just at that time, without removing alcohol from me and without having any conscious contact or any type of connection with a higher power, like I'm nothing. Like I'm absolutely nothing, and obviously I did not know that at that time. But the PO knocked on my door, and he just said, "What's going on?" And I just told him flat out, for the first time in my life, full acceptance. I was just like, "I can't stop drinking." And he was like, we can do this 2 ways. You can come first thing in the morning to Allentown, over to booking, and we can process you in, or you can come with me right now. And I was just defeated. And of course, I was in the kitchen with my PO, and my dad overheard, and my dad was like, "Brian," he's like, "take him now." and I was just like, I wasn't like mad, I wasn't happy, I was just like so numb. And I was just like, "Yeah, just take me now." I didn't even think about it. Nothing ran through my head. There was no resistance. There was no happiness. There was just like, just complete defeatedness. Like it was a no-brainer. And he handcuffed me. He let me smoke a cigarette, which would also be the last cigarette I ever smoked, on my front porch. I remember that menthol Marlboro in my mouth and flicking it with both my hands tied together with his whatever he had. It wasn't handcuffs. It was like the plastic wrap thing. And I flicked it in the flower bud. And like I said, life would change drastically at that moment. I would then go into county prison, and I would sit until I got sentenced to state prison. But while I sat there and did my time, someone had mentioned to me that at the bottom of the jail there's like this secret block, and they were like, "It's for addicts and alcoholics." And it's a program facility. It's a program block. Basically, you're going through AA meetings and NA meetings constantly. It's all people that want to try to do the right thing, get sober, stay clean, so to speak. It's just a conglomerate of different guys. And somebody had mentioned it to me while I was playing pinochle, and I don't know what it was, but at the time I had no clue. But now at this date I know it was just God giving me intuition, and was just said maybe I should look into that. And I did, and I signed up for it, and 2-3 days later, they called me down, and I packed up my stuff, and I went down to the bottom floor, because normally when I go to jail, I just, like I said, I play pinochle, I drink my coffee, I do my thing, and let the time fly. But something in me, like I said, had spoken, and I went down to that block and spent the latter part of, several months there. And I went to AA meetings and NA meetings constantly. I did big book studies, and I had speakers come in, through AA and through H&I and whatnot every single day. And, I just listened. And I often talked about this a lot, as I had a big book, and I sat in my bunk every night and I read my big book. And, I just sat by myself. I wasn't, anybody. I was just a dude with a couple, solid months under his belt, just trying to do the next right thing. But I read those pages, and they spoke to me with such gravity. And I say it all the time, like my first year of sobriety, Bill W. sponsored me, straight up. I didn't have a sponsor. I just sat there with the first 164 pages, and I read it, and I didn't know what I was doing. I had no clue, and I didn't need to, because it's all outlined in the big book. I could have sat there by myself, eating a honey bun and eating ramen noodles, just sitting there on my bunk, and in the words, they spoke to me because I'm an alcoholic. I didn't need, I don't recommend anybody not reading the first 164 without a sponsor, or you don't need a sponsor or anything like that, but I was left to my own devices. And I was sick, and I was hurting, and I was desperate. And I had a little bit of a seed planted in my head, and I wasn't going to let that thing go. And I just continued to read, and I continued to follow exactly what Bill said. When he told me to pray, I prayed. And when he told me to do this, I did that. And like I said, did I probably miss out on a few things? Absolutely. And do I think that was my saving grace and that I'm sober today because of that experience? No, not necessarily. But it does embed a huge part of my story of just how powerful and impactful that book has on me and was on me during that time. And that I was just trying to do things to the best of my ability, and that it really, in some indication, it worked. I then went to state prison and got transferred. I didn't think I was going to, but they sentenced me to it. And I remember going to Graterford. And when you go to Graterford, you transfer all your stuff to get processed through your state prison, because you go through testing and all different types of health checks and everything like that. They filter everybody through all the 20 or 30 different systems across PA. I brought my big book with me and a Bible. And I read the Bible sparingly. It wasn't like something that I was reading regularly, like the big book. But you're only supposed to bring 2 or 3 things with you when you transfer around: a picture or 2, maybe a journal, and you can only have one book, and it's the Bible. And when I went through processing at Graterford, he went through my box of just a handful of things, like I said, not much. And he saw that I had 2 books, the guard, whoever, and he looked at me, and he looked at the big book, he picked it up, he looked at the Bible, and he was about to throw it out, and because they just have trash cans for all the guys that keep getting processed through of all the stuff they try to bring in. And he picked up the big book, and he went like that, and he set it back in my box. And I brought that over to state prison with me, and I thought that was really weird, because in hindsight, guards don't do that. They don't break the rules. They don't just say, we'll let this guy bring an extra book in, because that's just, especially in prison, let alone a police officer or in the civilian world. You break a rule, and then everybody wants to facilitate that rule. They want to take advantage of it. They want to bring an extra book. But this gentleman, for whatever reason, I don't know. Maybe he knew an alcoholic. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he was an alcoholic. I have no clue. But God saw fit that this man would then give me my book and put it back in my possession and allow me to continue to utilize it for the next several months while I sat in state prison. And I went to meetings and I did my thing, but ultimately, when I was there, I really kept to myself, and I really tried to pray a lot, and I really tried to talk to gentlemen that I thought were really about this. And it's hard to do that, and to really judge people in that light, because you don't want to judge them in a bad light, but you also don't want to judge somebody in prison like that they're going to do the right thing necessarily too, because it's really easy to say things while you're in there and have a heavy heart and think that you've changed and there's a transformation. And one of the things I did notice while I was in prison was that there would be a few people I would talk to. I was over in Chester, which is normally like a short-term facility place. It's not like a long-term jail, but sometimes they'll have lifers come in that live near Philadelphia that have been doing time up in Erie, been doing time up in Pittsburgh or Altoona or something, and they want to come closer to their family. And since they've been in prison for 20 or 30 years and they're not getting out, or, there's life without parole, they would come to Chester and they would grant them that to be near Philly, so their family wouldn't have to drive 6, 7, 8 hours over there. And that was a big deal for somebody like that, that all that they've left is just visits with their family and whatnot. And I would talk to some of them alcoholic and some not, that were, at the time, at a young age, doing reckless things under alcohol and under the influence of drugs. And it amazed me to how much acceptance people that are doing life in prison have. I often think about that a lot, is people out on death row, people that have no chance of ever paroling out, that they're going to be doing life. The level of acceptance in their heart and in their demeanor and the way they are, I don't think there's anything close to it that I've ever experienced in any other individual. I've seen people even on their deathbed, grandparents and friends and whatnot that have cancer and whatnot, maybe the only thing that could come close to it. But the level of acceptance that some of these gentlemen had in their heart, and I talked to them and I learned from them, and I try to stay around people that, like I said, I just thought that had a change of heart and that were trying to do the right thing. And I got out, and part of what H and I said over and over again was, please hit a meeting, hit a meeting, hit a meeting the first night you get out. Hit a meeting. I heard that every night, day after day. I went to a meeting every single day just about. Hit a meeting, hit a meeting. And I never did it. Before, when I would go into prison and there were different situations, rehabs and whatnot. But like I said, I've been slowly having a transformation of heart, and it was outwardly working. And that first day I got out, and I went to my parents' house. They graciously let me come back and stay with them and parole over there. And I didn't go link up with people. I didn't go get some food. I didn't go take a nap on my bed. I didn't do the normal, regular things that people do when they want their freedom back and it's their first day. I went to my first outside AA meeting, and it was in Quakertown. It was Monday at 8 o'clock, Feet First Speakers Group. I walked in those doors, and I had never felt so much peace in my life. Just sitting there and finally being on an outside meeting and finally being I did it. I finally listened to a suggestion. I finally actually did what they told me to do. It was like a miracle. And I sat there, and little did I know that meeting was going to change my world, was going to change my life, and that the people inside of that meeting were going to change my life. Little did I know that my sponsor was sitting in that room that night. I didn't meet him there that night, or I didn't shake his hand or anything, and I didn't know that my sponsor was sitting in that meeting, and I didn't know my sponsor was sitting in that meeting either. I didn't know anything at the time. But a few weeks later, I went to a meeting every single day when I got out, and that went on for a while. I don't say this with ego, I don't say this with pride, but probably for my first 2-3 years, I went to a meeting every single day. And not because, I think part of it was just because it just became so routine. It just became habit. It wasn't because I thought I was just going to relapse, or I was just going to pick up a drink if I didn't go to a meeting. It was just that was the thing that I felt right in my heart, to get done with work and just to go to a meeting and just to get with my people and just to talk with them and just to be around them and just to feel that love and that connection. But I've been going to a lot of meetings, and I met my sponsor at a totally different meeting, in a totally different area, and little did I know that he was, a member of my now home group. But we got together, and I remember he invited me over to his house. He had a couple sponsees with him, and I knew a couple of them, and they were at the meeting, and they ultimately introduced me to him. They said, "Oh, that's our sponsor, Mikey. We're going over to his house for a cookout. We're going to go swim. Maybe you want to be interested." And I hear a lot of different talk in AA about what we should find in a sponsor. There's so many different types of cliches I hear, and I'll get into that a little bit because it's been heavy on my heart about some of the things that we say, what we endorse, some of the chatter that we kind of just tumble around here. And one of the things we say is just find somebody that has what you want, in a sponsor. Find somebody that has what you want. I hear people say that all the time, and I don't think that's a wrong thing, and I'm not here to critique anybody or whatsoever, but I think about at that time, when I met Mikey, my sponsor today, I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know much about myself. I was hurting, and I knew that I was a ticking time bomb, and that I had learned a lot, and I didn't want to just use knowledge to think that I was just going to magically just patch myself and dust myself off and get out of state prison and just keep going to these meetings and think it was okay. I knew I had to meet with somebody and go through the big book, page by page with a sponsor, even though I had read page by page. And, I didn't know much about Mikey, but he gave me a handshake. He looked me in my eye, he smiled, he said, "You want to come over and swim in my pool? You eat a burger?" And I hadn't been in the pool in a really long time. It had been quite a while, and that's all I needed. I didn't need much more. I didn't need to investigate the guy. I didn't need to know how much time he had. I didn't need to know if he was about this spiritual life. He just smiled, and he just said, "Do you want to come over?" And I learned today that that's really what the greatest thing about sponsorship is. It's a relationship. It's not really based upon anything else. Your sponsorship is only as good as the relationship and connection is. And quite frankly, that's all I needed. I was desperate. Whatever he was selling, I was buying. It didn't matter. I just need to go through the steps. It could have been anybody here. And I don't say that to say Mikey's less than anybody or you're more than anybody. It's just that opportunity presented itself. And I like to think about that a lot for sponsorship, is that, I talk to people all the time, and I'm like, hey, just get with somebody. Just start talking to them. Maybe you don't even want to read the book for the first week or two. Maybe you don't even want, you're not sure about anything, but just sit down with somebody, get a cup of coffee, just see who the person is. Just get to know them, You can grow from there. And I did, and we hit the book pretty hard. Another thing I like to say is, I just have my experience. I'm not here to say how anybody should go through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't have a monopoly on it, nor do I want to have a monopoly on it. I just know the way that I went and the way that Mikey bestowed it upon me. And he was pretty vigorous. He just said, I'll go as quickly as you want, as slow as you want. And, we started with a regiment, so to speak. I was like, hey, how about we just meet up once a week? And if you meet with your sponsor once a week, line by line, and you go through things pretty properly, my experience has been that I was able to have a spiritual experience pretty quickly. Every single week meeting with him. I remember spending my 22nd birthday along a lake. It was November, the foliage was coming, it was beautiful, and I spent my birthday 10 hours doing a fifth step with my sponsor. At the ripe age of 22. I didn't go out and have a beer, I didn't go meet up with my friends, I didn't take some selfies on Instagram and set up a party or anything. I spent my day doing a fifth step. It was one of the greatest days of my life. I wouldn't give up that day for anything. The time that my sponsor spent, the time that he poured into me, the listening ear. Sponsorship's a beautiful thing. There's a lot of us, and I don't know how many gentlemen can relate, but before I came here, I didn't really have a great relationship with too many men. I really didn't. I had decent relationships to varying degrees, but not a true connection with a male. And I love my father and whatnot, and I love a lot of other men in my life, but I've been just so disconnected from self and so disconnected from everything and everybody and God that I hadn't had a decent relationship with another male in a long time. And I love that about that, that relationship what I have with him, and the fact that he gave me that time and that listening ear and did whatever he could. I went to whatever lengths. He asked me right in the beginning, what are you willing to do to stay sober? And I said, whatever you tell me. And I feel pretty comfortable to this day that if I ever asked him right now, say, Mikey, did I go to whatever length you said? Yeah, I'm pretty sure he would say yeah. With some varying degree as the years passed, but especially in the beginning when I was going through the step work and going through the book and whatnot. And we continued on this journey and continued doing my step work, and I went through some amends. I handled a bunch of them, not all of them, but a good chunk of them, and a lot of them went to the way that I thought they would. I love doing an amends to go through the proper process of doing so. My favorite part about it is not knowing how it's going to go. I love when I think I know how it's going to go, and then I learn that it didn't go that way at all. I think that's actually one of the most fulfilling parts about an amends is to learn that whatever my perspective or however I thought that person interpreted something, or how I acted or how I didn't act, or what they did or what they didn't, was a complete falsification in my own head. That they saw something totally different than me, and they were hurt by a totally different way than I had thought I hurt them. I like, as sick as it sounds today, is that when something terrible happens to me that I had done to somebody else. I'll give you an example. I woke up, probably it was like August this time last year. I woke up and I was getting ready to make a cup of coffee, go to work. And as I woke up, I looked out the window and I did a double take. And I looked back out the window and my car was gone. Gone. I'm like, that's weird. I just bought it, literally a week or two prior, right? I don't lock my car. I leave the keys in it oftentimes. That's just what I do. Sometimes I even leave my wallet in the car with the keys, just sitting there. I grew up in like a very rural area, so that was not uncommon. There would only be a couple houses. I lived out in farmland, so my family grew up. We didn't lock the house. We didn't lock anything really, just because that was the type of neighborhood. And I've grown up that way. And back when I was a kid, when I was drinking, I used to just rummage through people's houses. I would just go through their cars. I would just take their car, drive it to the next neighborhood, and use their car temporarily, and then park it back up early in the morning at 5, 6 in the morning before work came, and that's what I would do. It's a handful of my charges, as a matter of fact. And I never understood the gravity of what it's like to go through someone's car, just for change, just to go and invade someone's space, let alone take it, utilize it, drive it off, and then drop it back off. I couldn't process it. I knew that it was obviously wrong, and I was just like so regretful once I got sober about some of the things I did, but I had never truly, felt that. And I woke up that morning and somebody took my car. Somebody took my car, and my wife looked at me, and I was just smiling. And she's like, what's going through your head? And I was like, they took it. It finally happened. And she's like, "What? Are you not mad?" I'm like, "How can I be mad? How can I be mad?" I was actually, I was almost somewhat happy because it sucked. It was terrible. I felt invaded. I felt like somebody went through my stuff. They drove the car about 2 miles down, left the doors wide open in the middle of the street, completely open. Nothing really out of it other than like a pair of AirPods, but just completely open. All the doors swung open, and I got the car back, and I just thought, wow, that's a terrible feeling, someone coming onto your property, someone coming into your space. Even if it was a joke, even if it was a couple kids for a joyride, even if it was just like a prank or some TikTok, or if they just wanted a pair of AirPods, someone took my car, and now I know how it feels. I like when those things happen to me today. The pains and the stresses and the harm that I caused on other people, I love when it comes full swing to me. I love it's the only way I can fully really grasp that 10th step. It's one thing to go up to somebody and try to make amends, but it's another thing if you go up to them and you really know that pain, what they went through, So I continued to go through my amends, and then I set on my journey. I continued to pray, and my sponsor cut me loose, and he let me off to the real world, and I started sponsoring other men, and I hit the ground running. I really did. To this day, sometimes I feel like I've never stopped running. But for my first year or two, once I was running around and whatnot, I purchased a home up in Quakertown, and I lived with a bunch of alcoholics. A bunch of them were actually my sponsees at the time, and we lived together, and there was like 3 or 4 of us, and just terrible things happened. I stayed sober through it all, but I learned a lot. And, you know, through everything I learned was that, you know, today, you know, I sit here and, you know, I can't quote the big book page by page. I can say a few lines. I've got a few sponsees right now. They're not doing good, you know, so to speak, from my eyes. Maybe they're doing fine in God's eyes, but, you know, they're stuck on their fourth step. You know, they're drinking here and there. They keep calling me up saying they can't stop. I mean, I'm not anybody special. I'm just another alcoholic trying to get another day. Just put my head on my pillow tonight, just rest and have a clear head. But what I've learned is that, you know, I don't have the power to put a drink in somebody's hand, and I definitely don't have the power to take it out, is what I've learned from this program and what I've learned from, you know, meeting up with other people and trying to help others. I take sponsorship really serious. And the way I took sponsorship serious like 4 or 5 years ago is a lot different than I take sponsorship serious today. And I'm sure, you know, everybody can relate to that and how they, you know, treat their sponsor, how they treat their sponsees, and how they mentor, or whatever the case may be. But today, like I said, I look at it as like a relationship. I do. You know, I'm really just another vessel. I'm just somebody that's there. I think about a lot of times the gentlemen that I have sponsored, and I just stay in touch with them. A lot of them, I say this a lot, that, you know, when they stop going to meetings, they stop calling me, they don't hit me up anymore, and it's been months, maybe years. There's just so many guys that I still just say, hey, hope you're doing well, man. You don't have to hit me back. I'm not hitting you up to see if you're drinking. I'm not hitting you up because I want to take you to a meeting tonight. I just want to let you know I care about you, I'm thinking about you, and let me know how you're doing. You know? I do that all the time with guys, and I don't do it like regularly. Just these guys pop in my head. You know, I haven't seen blah 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 in a while. You know, it's been 2 years since last time I ever remember reading, you know, step blah 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 with blah blah blah. And I just give them a shout out, and I can tell you, I can count multiple times how many people have hit me up, 5, 6 months, 2, 3 years later, and said, hey man, I just want to let you know, I kind of want to go back to AA. You know. Would you be willing to just link up and get a cup of coffee again? It's been so long, man. I don't know what it's like, and I've been out here, you know, doing my thing for so long, and I've been so disconnected, and just want to let you know that that text you sent me, I know I didn't answer back the 5 times, but it meant a lot to me. You know? I've learned that it's not all about just the cliche things in AA, that, you know, this is real connection, this is real people, this is real humanity, these are people that are suffering, and I know what that suffering feels like, and I know at the basis that that's really what matters. And I've lost a lot of sponsees. I just lost one the other day. I have 2, well I had 2, I had one guy, he's right now living at my house, and I had the other guy who was living at my house currently right now. It's really sad. Part of the thing I think about in this world and how I approach life and my friends and my family is that, like, God is either all or nothing. And today I realize that, like, you know, my job, my money, my car, my house, like, it's all God's. It's all God's. Like, I work for GSK, a pharmaceutical company, but, like, I really don't work for GSK, man. Like, I really do. Like, I work for God. Like, it's all God's. Like, when I die, when everything's, like, I don't take any of this with me. I don't. And so I like to try to look at, like, what I have today, like my assets, the things I have, and I try to use it to the best of my ability to help people. And my wife and I, we had, like I said, we had 2 gentlemen living with us. They were just living for free. We were just taking them to meetings. I was trying to take them through the work together at the same time. You know, just trying to, you know, like I said, use what I have, what God has given me, freely given me, and use it and give back, pass it on. And this gentleman, he went out over the weekend to go see his family in AC, and we got a call a couple weeks ago, waking up at 6 a.m. and he had passed away. He overdosed on the Yale down in Kensington. On the train, had just been sitting there slumped, and obviously nobody said anything and just let him be, because, you know, it's Philly and that's just how it is down there. And probably went on exit for exit and exit, just rolling by, and nobody thought or said anything. But he died, and you know, a lot of people came up to me and just, you know, said, "I'm sorry, Tom. I'm so sorry, man. I know how close you are with him, and I know you were trying to help him, and I know he was living there." And they said to me, and one gentleman came up and said, "You know, it's a shame, but, like, some people just don't want it enough. You know, they just don't want it enough." And I looked him in the eye, and I almost wanted to start crying. I walked away. I didn't say anything to him, and I'm just like, it's one of the things we say here in AA, and it's just like, he didn't want it enough. You know, like, who are we to say that somebody didn't want it enough? Who are we to say that somebody didn't want it more than anybody else here? You know, that's playing the role of God, assuming that we think that somebody did or didn't want something more than anybody else. It's also really contradictory to this literature and this book, that if you want something or desire something, or that you will it enough or have so much might that you'll attain it, and build stomps on that every time. That, you know, no self-will, no self-knowledge, no matter how much desire is in you, that alcoholic will take another drink, provided he doesn't have a spiritual awakening. And so when people come up to me and say that, I just pray, please, just be careful how you approach people when they lose somebody in this program. And that they wanted it, they didn't want it enough, or that, they couldn't reach it, or they whatever, just to look somebody and just pat them on the back and give them a hug and just say, it's shameful. This disease is just so shameful, it's so brutal, it just rips everything in its path. And there is some good in it. I was sitting there talking about it the other day with somebody, and as brutal and as awful as this disease is, and how many lives it takes, there's also there's also some other things that I think about too that are brilliant and beautiful. Is that there's a solution. I think about people that have cancer or have MS. And I was talking about it with my sponsor the other night in the car driving. I went off on a tangent. He just sat there. I didn't even know I was talking to him because I was just rambling like an idiot. And I was just like, you know what? Like, we have it actually not that bad. Like, alcoholics actually don't have it that bad because we have a solution that is proven to work for countless millions of alcoholics and addicts. Whereas somebody with cancer, with a terminally, a brain tumor right now, like they don't have that. Somebody that is suffering from like a deep depression, chronic depression and anxiety that wants to commit suicide right now, like they don't necessarily have this go-to program, this go-to fellowship that we have. So as much as I sit there and I think like, damn, like it sucks being alcoholic, and it sucks sometimes having to deal with the deaths, it sucks with the tragedy, it sucks with all that, it's such a terrible disease. I sit there and think like, we all have diseases, and some don't have that luxury of the solution that we have. It's like, it really is. I mean, I've seen countless of alcoholics come from the scrap heaps to a life greater than their wildest dreams. I mean, of every walk of life, every different type of person, from every nook and cranny of any town, any state. I've watched it. I've heard people's stories, their testimonies. This isn't something that's new. So I just do what I can. And I just talk with people. I get their number. I sit down, try to have a cup of coffee with them. And that's just how it goes, and it's still the bright spot of my life, somehow, with that tragedy and with people passing and whatnot. It's just that it doesn't make anything easier or any harder, but the reality is that I have a gift. We all have a gift. We all sit here with an experience that we can pass on to somebody else. That's another thing I often think about, is that not everybody has that. We possess something that nobody else has, is being an alcoholic that was once, like I just said, at the scrap heaps, that now has a life that is so different, that is a change of heart, that requires a consummation of reconciling with a relationship with a higher power, relationships with each and one of us, and our family members and our loved ones and our co-workers. And I think back to some sponsorship and some work that I was doing with a friend. He lived around here. He wasn't doing too well. I won't use his name and whatnot. He was drinking again, and I was reaching out to him, just kind of how I normally do. And I just said, hey, why don't we just link up? Why don't we just go for a hike, get some fresh air and whatnot? He said, sure. So we went up to where I'm from in Lehigh County. It's called Bake Oven Knob. We went for a quick hike. And I said, if you don't mind, man, why don't we just sit down? It overlooks the whole valley. It's a big rock. You just walk like 5 minutes. You park, you walk 5 minutes up this path, and next thing you know, you're overlooking a beautiful gorge of, Pennsylvania, all of Lehigh County. And we sat there. We were on this big rock. It's like the Pride Rock from Lion King, and dangling our feet. We got our big books open. I'm like, if you don't mind, man, why don't we just read just a page or two? I think it would really help. And he was open to it and whatnot, and he was more than open. So I said, let's go for it. And I opened up to like page like 59 or 60, right around step 3. I think that's always a good place to go when someone's kind of beat up and kind of down and out, is going to the actor section of the book, who set the ball rolling in motion, and ultimately to look at oneself. And so we were reading, and I noticed that there was a couple down below, a young couple, maybe 19, 20, not very old. And there was a boy and a girl, and they were drinking. She had like one of those like fruity drinks, the Trulies or whatever nowadays, and he had like a tall boy, I think it was like a PB, it was a Steel Reserve. They were young bucks, and they were drinking below, and they were like, summer loving type of thing. But we were reading, and 20 feet high up on a rock, And all of a sudden, after we got done with our books, we were sitting down, we were just looking at the view, and all of a sudden, 20 minutes later, a gentleman came up, tapped me on the shoulder, I felt his hand. And I turned around, it was the kid 20 feet below. I didn't even notice he wasn't there anymore. And he said, "Hey, excuse me, sir. I'm sorry to bug you, man, but I couldn't help over notice it. Were you guys reading the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous?" And I was like, it was sitting on my lap still. I mean, it was right there. I was literally dangling my feet off of a rock, and I was like, yeah, actually we were. And he's like, "Hey, I don't know why, or what this is all about, but I got to be honest with you about something." He's like, "I'm from Georgia." He's like, "I had a year sober." He's like, "I picked up like 6 weeks ago, man." He's like, "I haven't stopped drinking since." He's like, "I've been drinking every single day." He's like, "I feel terrible." He's like, "I'm exhausted." And he's like, "I don't know if it was God or what, but hearing that," he's like, "I want to go to a meeting tonight." And I was like, "Hey man, like, do it." I was like, "Please." I was like, "Just go to a meeting. If you want, we can look one up now." He's like, "No." He's like, I mean it. I really mean it." He looked me dead in the eye. He's like, "I'm going to go to a meeting tonight." He's like, "I appreciate you." He's like, "You have a good day." I was like, "All right, cool." Right? My friend, who I'm trying to help, or reading and whatnot, he's struggling. We go off in the car, and a week or two goes by, and I'm at a different meeting, campfire meeting. And I share about this experience, right? Somebody mentioned something that made me think about that experience I had with that boy. And it's a big meeting. It's like a big campfire meeting, maybe 100 people or so. People flock in from all different areas. It's, not like just like some small, quaint type of thing. And I got done sharing. And an old head, a gentleman in the back, maybe like 67 years old, definitely like an old timer in the program, raised his hand. He said, to the young man who just spoke and shared that story, he said, "I just want to let you know, I'm from the Pocono East group, and that boy made it in that night." And he had shared that exact story that you had just mentioned. He said he's been coming to the home group ever since. My body just shook, just like rattled me, like God had just like blown like a breath of icy hot, I don't even know, it just shook me. And I got off the phone with my grand sponsor the next day, my great grand sponsor is no longer with us, he has passed. And I knew he would love it. And I said, "Tree man," I said, "You're not going to believe I told him everything." He said, "Well, you know what, Tom?" He said, "That's exactly it." He said, "You were there to help that guy." He said, "God put you in place to help that man, not the man that was sitting next to you on the ledge reading that book with." Hindsight's only 20/20, man. I sit there and I think that I'm helping somebody. I think I'm doing my right and spreading the word and doing the right thing here in AA, passing it along. And that wasn't the vessel. That wasn't the guy that I was trying to help. God utilized something totally different and some other completely random guy I had never met. I couldn't even help the guy next to me. I did nothing for that guy. He's probably drinking right now. But some random 20-year-old kid just could hear the cusp of a couple words, just pick up a little bit, like I said, of page 61 or 62, or wherever the hell it was. It can only be God. That can only be God. I can't explain that for any other reason. There's no other reason for me to explain it. I think about like I just mentioned, my great-grand sponsor, he passed. I was playing poker with some of my sponsor, some of my friends, his sponsees, my sponsees, we were playing poker. And it was a few months ago, it was during the fall. Having a joyous time. All of a sudden, boom, boom, my sponsor gets a call. It's his sponsor, it's Mickey. I hear him pick him up. "Oh, what's up, Mickey?" He goes, walks over. Now my great-grand sponsor, he's had stage 4 cancer for 4 or 5 years. He was battling it. Mikey comes over, drops the phone. He says, I see a tear shed from his eye. He said, "Tree man, he's not going to make it for the night. It looks like he's about to pass." And we're like, just all shook. We were playing poker. Everything was just fine a minute ago, right? And we all look at each other, and without hesitation, we don't even think. Everybody just grabs their keys. We just drop our cards, drop everything. There's literally food. Everything's out on this table. We're outside, and everybody just grabs their keys, and we gotta go to the hospital. We gotta go to the hospital. He said they're only gonna make it maybe for a few hours, maybe by tomorrow, right? So we get to the hospital. He's sitting there. He's basically in like a coma. He's all tubed up and whatnot, and they are lying on his right by his bedside is his 16-year coin. He had just celebrated 16 years that night or that day. That was just classic him. He had been in an induced coma for a day or two, and We just sat there with him all together, all of us, and I just remember sitting there praying, just holding his hand, and it's just the craziest thing. It's so crazy to just drop what you're doing, to not think anything of it, just have intuition and just do that. That wasn't in me 7 years ago, to just drop what I was doing and just think about other people, just set aside everything I think I know about myself, the situation, and just go. And that happens to me all the time. It's like one of the most profound ways that I know I'm sober today and I'm doing the right thing and I'm connected with God, is that just my ability to just think that I just go do, because it's just in me now. Just like before, it was just in me to go pick up a drink. Just somehow magically, it just gravitated right over to the bar or something. Now it's the opposite today. It's just in me to just go do that. And I remember sitting there and praying with him, and all of us just holding each other's hands and just doing a set-aside prayer, and he passed that night. And I remember just sitting there seeing that coin next to him, that son of a gun. He made it. He just didn't go. He hung on until he got that 16-year coin. And those are the moments that are just embedded in me in this program, is the relationships. I talk about that all the time, is that I don't take anything with me. I don't think I do take anything with me. I think the only thing that we take is those relationships and those memories that we have with one another. I think those are the only things that matter. I really do. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that ultimately, that God wants us to have that and cherish that. That he doesn't want us to focus on the material things that we gain year after year, and some of the bright things that come with this lifestyle and each day of sobriety. He wants us to focus on each other. He wants us to focus on each other, and he wants us to be there for one another through thick and thin, no matter what. Whether it's on a deathbed or whether it's on somebody's first day at a diner with a cup of coffee and it's shaken out of his hand. It doesn't matter. But I've continued to do my thing, and it's just been tough. It's been a tough year. It's been a tough chain of events recently, and just all the tragedy and whatnot. We sat with my wife, her cousin, who's one of us. Ultimately, a couple weeks ago, he shot himself in the head, committed suicide. And the family, who are all great people, were sitting there, and they're grieving, and they're trying to process it, and they're not one of us, and they're just sitting there, and they're talking about it with each other, and they're trying to just wrap their head around this. And I'm sitting there, and I really don't know the guy that well. I mean, he's my cousin out of my wife, but I had talked to him a couple times, but I didn't know him, but I knew him. And they're sitting there trying to wrap their head around it, and how this happened, and we really hadn't talked to him in a while, and he had been on and off his meds, and he didn't get his prescription, and we were about to send him to Horsham, but I got off the phone with him. He didn't want to go. He was really he didn't really want to go to Horsham Clinic, and he was really scared about going. And I just sat there, and I just filled my head, and I just remembered what it was like to be like him. Somebody saying, "You got to go to treatment. We got to go to treatment tonight. We got to go," and just being just filled with fear, just filled with anxiety, just you know what I mean, and being on and off meds, and feeling depressed, and I just I couldn't fathom, it made so much sense to me why he did it, I don't look at suicide as something as a weakling, or somebody that doesn't care about life, or is a selfish thing in some regard. I know some people do, but I just know that it's like a breaking point, an unbearable breaking point that some of us reach here in this program, and some of us not even in this program, with other mental health issues and other things. But I look at that today, and I just know that kind of pain, that unbearableness is just like we all have that tap out, It's not a bad thing. It doesn't make him less of a person. It doesn't make him, a terrible, guilty person, or, somebody that's enriched in selfishness, and that, whatever the types of things that we associate with that type of lifestyle and those types of choices. But I do know that ultimately today, that my life is good. My life is really good, and it's more or less about embracing the fact that I just have a lot of peace and a lot of understanding about myself. And I think that brings me great joy. I think that's one of the greatest gifts of sobriety, is understanding oneself. And really truly knowing who I am, what I believe, how I feel about things. Being able to communicate to myself. I think about all the time, when there's things that go wrong with my relationship with coworkers, or I get in a fight with my wife, or something goes on, like today, I just go to God. It's the first thing I do. I get on my knees, or I'll be sitting in any situation, I'll just pray, because that's all I know how to do. That's how I know myself. That's how I recognize things today, is that when things get tough, when things get get strange or when my back's against the wall, that I just go to God, I go to people, and I rely on them, I trust on them, I have a dependency on all of you and all of God. I think regardless of, all the ups and downs and all the terribleness and, like I said, the tragedies and whatnot, that there's no other way I'd want to live my life than to do what I do and the work that I do. I can't imagine it any other way. I'm so grateful for being an alcoholic. I'm so grateful for all the tragedy and all the bad things that happened. I wouldn't give it up for anything.